Mia was excited. She loved traveling with her father. Today was a special trip. They were going to visit her grandmother in another city. Mia packed her favorite book, her headphones, and some snacks. Her father, Mr. Johnson, smiled at her as they walked through the busy airport. The airport was full of people. Some were rushing, some were laughing, and some looked tired. Maya held her father's hand tightly. They went through security, showed their tickets, and finally reached the boarding gate. Soon, it was time to get on the plane. Maya and her father showed their tickets and walked down the long tunnel to the plane. The flight attendant at the door smiled at them and said, "Welcome aboard." Mia smiled back politely. They found their seats near the window. Maya loved sitting by the window. She liked to watch the clouds and the tiny houses below. Her father helped her put her bag in the overhead bin and then sat down beside her. Maya looked around. People were finding their seats and putting away their bags. Some children were laughing. Some adults were talking on their phones. Everything felt normal. Everything felt safe. But then, Mia noticed a woman sitting across the aisle. She was staring at Mia. Not a kind stare. It was a hard, angry look. Maya felt uncomfortable, but tried to ignore her. The woman looked middle-aged, with short blonde hair and a big purse on her lap. She whispered something to the man sitting next to her. He looked away awkwardly. Maya leaned closer to her father and whispered, "Dad, that woman is staring at me." Mr. Johnson glanced over and saw the woman's cold eyes. He gave Mia a calm smile and said, "It's okay, sweetie. Just relax." The plane filled up quickly. The flight attendants walked up and down, helping passengers find their seats. The captain's voice came over the speaker, welcoming everyone and explaining that the flight would take 2 hours. Just when Maya thought things would settle down, the woman stood up. She called loudly to the nearest flight attendant. "Excuse me, she said, waving her hand. The flight attendant, a young woman with a kind face, walked over and asked, "Yes, Mom. How can I help you?" The woman pointed at Mia angrily. "That girl cannot sit here. She needs to move." The flight attendant looked confused. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but she has a valid ticket. She's sitting in her assigned seat." The woman crossed her arms and said loudly, "I don't care. I don't feel comfortable sitting near her. Move her somewhere else." The people nearby turned their heads. Some passengers started whispering. A few pulled out their phones to record the scene. Mia's face turned red. She looked down at her hands, feeling small and embarrassed. She had done nothing wrong. Mr. Johnson stayed calm. He placed his hand gently on Mia's shoulder, letting her know he was there. The flight attendant stayed polite. "Ma'am, everyone has the right to sit where their ticket says. Please take your seat so we can prepare for takeoff." But the woman refused. She kept standing, making a scene. Her voice grew louder. "I'm not flying next to her. This is wrong." Mia's heart beat faster. She wanted to cry, but she stayed strong. She didn't want to give the woman the satisfaction of seeing her upset. More passengers were watching now. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others whispered words of support for Mia. Mr. Johnson remained silent, but his eyes were serious. He was waiting, watching, and thinking. He knew exactly when to step in, but not yet. The woman's behavior grew worse. She called for another flight attendant. She demanded that Mia be moved immediately. The second flight attendant, an older man, came quickly and tried to calm the woman. "Ma'am, if you continue this behavior, the captain will be notified. Please sit down." The woman looked furious. She pointed at Mia again and said, "People like her don't belong here." Gasps filled the air. The entire front section of the plane heard her hateful words. Mia's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away. Mr. Johnson's jaw tightened. He knew he could not stay silent much longer. His daughter was being attacked for no reason. The flight attendant spoke firmly this time. "Ma'am, this is your final warning. Sit down, or we will have to remove you from the plane." The woman hesitated but didn't sit. Instead, she stood there, arms crossed, breathing heavily, full of anger. Mia sat still, her hands shaking slightly. She whispered to her father, "Why is she doing this, Dad?" Mr. Johnson looked at her with kind, strong eyes. "Some people are full of hate, sweetheart. But we stay strong. We do what's right." Mia nodded, trying to be brave. She didn't know it yet, but something big was about to happen. Something that would turn the whole situation upside down. Mr. Johnson calmly reached inside his jacket. And the real story had only just begun. The woman stood in the narrow airplane aisle, refusing to move. Her angry face was red now, and her voice grew louder with every word. Everyone around her could feel the tension building. Passengers who were putting away their bags or talking quietly suddenly stopped. All eyes were now on her, on Mia, and on Mr. Johnson. "I said no move her," the woman shouted, pointing at Mia like she was a problem, not a person. The flight attendant stayed professional, but her face showed worry. "Ma'am, please lower your voice. You are disturbing other passengers." But the woman was not listening. She waved her hands in anger. "This is not right. I don't feel safe sitting near her." Mia's heart dropped. She had never felt so humiliated. She kept her head low, wishing she could disappear. Her father sat calmly beside her, his face serious but controlled. He knew he had to stay calm for Mia's sake. He couldn't let this woman's hate win. Other passengers started whispering louder. A young man sitting 2 rows ahead pulled out his phone and started recording. A woman across the aisle shook her head and muttered, "Disgusting behavior." Some passengers looked angry, others uncomfortable. Still, the woman would not stop. She leaned closer to the flight attendant and said loudly enough for many to hear, "I paid good money for this seat. I don't want her near me. Move her now, or move me." The flight attendant tried to keep her voice calm and steady. "Ma'am, if you prefer another seat, we can check if there are empty seats available. But we will not move her. She has every right to be here." The woman's mouth twisted in anger. "No, I'm not the one who should move. She should move." She pointed again, her finger almost shaking from anger. Mia closed her eyes for a moment, trying not to cry. Her father leaned slightly toward her and whispered, "You're doing great, sweetheart. Just stay calm." Mia nodded, feeling a little stronger because of her father's words. The situation grew worse. The woman began yelling about rights and safety, even though Mia had done absolutely nothing wrong. Children started crying because the yelling scared them. A baby in the back of the plane began to scream. The flight attendants looked at each other helplessly. This was getting out of control, and the plane hadn't even left the ground yet. One of the senior flight attendants, an older man with gray hair, rushed down the aisle toward the scene. He had a serious, no-nonsense look on his face. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "you need to sit down immediately. If you do not, the captain will be informed, and we will have to delay the flight." But the woman didn't care. "I will not sit next to her," she shouted, her voice echoing across the cabin. Passengers gasped. Some people shook their heads in disbelief. Others looked at Mia with sympathy. Some looked at Mr. Johnson, wondering what he would do. Still, Mr. Johnson stayed seated. His calmness was surprising to many. He was like a rock, strong, quiet, and steady. Inside, though, Mr. Johnson was burning with anger. Not because of the insults thrown at him or his daughter, but because he knew hate like this should never be allowed to win. He believed in fighting back, but the right way, the smart way. The flight attendants huddled together quickly, speaking in low voices. They knew they couldn't let this woman's behavior continue. It was dangerous. It was hateful. It was ruining the peace on the plane. Passengers around Mia and her father started speaking up. "This is wrong," said one man loudly. "Let the girl sit where she belongs," said another woman. A third voice said, "Throw that lady off the plane if she doesn't stop." The woman looked around, realizing that she was losing support fast. But instead of calming down, she grew even angrier. "I will not sit next to her," she screamed once again. Then, in a shocking move, she took a step toward Mia as if trying to push past the flight attendants. Passengers gasped. Some stood up from their seats in shock. The flight attendants quickly blocked the woman's path, their arms out to protect Mia and Mr. Johnson. It was clear now. The woman was not just rude. She was dangerous. Mia gripped the seat tightly. She could feel her father getting ready. She didn't know exactly what he was planning to do, but she trusted him completely. And then, very calmly, very quietly, Mr. Johnson stood up. The entire plane seemed to go silent for a moment. Everyone watched him. Even the angry woman froze for just a second. Without raising his voice, Mr. Johnson spoke. "You have said enough," he said, his voice deep and strong. "Now it's time you listen." He slowly reached into his jacket. Passengers leaned closer, holding their breath. The woman's eyes grew wide. The flight attendants took a step back, not sure what was about to happen. Mia watched her father with pride and a little bit of awe. Because now, the real truth was about to be revealed. And it would change everything. Mr. Johnson stood tall in the small space between the seats. His eyes were calm, but powerful. Mia looked up at her father, feeling a wave of safety and hope. She knew everything was about to change. The angry woman, who had been shouting just moments ago, suddenly went quiet. She stared at Mr. Johnson's hand as he slowly pulled something from inside his jacket. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't something scary. It was a badge. A bright, shiny badge that caught the light and made everyone's eyes grow wide. Mr. Johnson held it up clearly for everyone to see. The letters were easy to read. FBI. The flight attendants stepped back in surprise. The passengers gasped. The woman's mouth opened, but no words came out. Mr. Johnson spoke again, his voice calm but full of strength. "I am a federal agent," he said. "You will sit down. You will stop this behavior. Right now." The woman looked like she had been slapped. Her face turned pale. She stumbled backward, bumping into another passenger's seat. The flight attendants quickly moved to support Mr. Johnson. "Sir," one of them said respectfully, "thank you for identifying yourself. We are handling the situation." Mr. Johnson nodded slowly, still keeping his eyes on the woman. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't threatening. He was simply standing there, powerful, steady, and completely in control. The senior flight attendant, the one with gray hair, took a deep breath and turned to the woman. "Ma'am," he said in a voice that left no room for argument, "you will sit down immediately. If you refuse, we will notify the captain and you will be removed from this aircraft." The woman opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. She glanced around at the many passengers staring at her, some with phones pointed at her, recording everything. She was trapped. Her hate had brought her here. And now, there was no escape. Mia sat still, her heart beating fast, but this time, it was not from fear. It was from pride. Her dad had protected her without even raising his voice. The woman muttered something under her breath and finally slumped into her seat. She pulled her purse close to her chest and turned her face toward the window, trying to hide. But it was too late. Everyone had seen her true face. The senior flight attendant knelt next to Mia and Mr. Johnson. "We are very sorry for what you experienced," he said quietly. "We do not accept this kind of behavior on our flights." Mr. Johnson nodded politely. "Thank you for your support." Mia gave a small smile, feeling braver now. She held her father's hand tightly. The flight attendant stood up and faced the passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said into a small microphone, "we apologize for the delay. We are committed to making sure every passenger is respected and safe. Thank you for your patience." Passengers clapped quietly. A few even gave Mr. Johnson respectful nods. Mia felt a warm glow inside her. The plane, which had been full of anger just minutes ago, now felt different. It felt like a place where wrong had been challenged and right had won. The crew quickly prepared for takeoff. Flight attendants double-checked the aisles, closed the overhead bins, and made sure everyone had their seatbelts fastened. As the engines roared to life, the angry woman sat stiffly in her seat, staring straight ahead, pretending not to notice all the eyes on her. She was no longer the loudest person on the plane. Now, she was silent. And the silence spoke louder than any of her hateful words. Maya leaned her head against her father's shoulder and whispered, "Thank you, Dad." Mr. Johnson smiled down at her and said softly, "Always, sweetheart. Always." The plane began to roll toward the runway. But Mia knew this flight was already unforgettable. Not because of the trouble, but because of the strength, calmness, and pride she had seen in her father. And somewhere deep inside, she felt stronger too. She had faced hate. She had stayed strong. And she had seen what real courage looked like. The journey had just begun. But Mia knew she would never forget this day for the rest of her life. As the plane rolled slowly toward the runway, a new feeling filled the air. The anger and hate from the rude woman were still there, like a small dark cloud. But something much stronger was now rising all around Mia and her father. It was support. It was kindness. It was the power of good people standing together. Mia sat quietly, her small hand still holding her father's strong hand. She peeked around, feeling curious. She could see passengers smiling at her warmly, giving little nods of encouragement. Some gave Mr. Johnson small salutes of respect after seeing his FBI badge. A man from 2 rows ahead stood up quickly before the flight attendants could stop him. He walked over to Mr. Johnson and Mia with a big smile. "You handled that like a true hero," the man said in a low but firm voice. "Thank you for showing us what real strength looks like." Mr. Johnson smiled politely and said, "Thank you, sir." The man turned to Mia and added, "You're very brave, young lady." Mia blushed but gave a shy smile. She had never felt so proud in her life. The man returned to his seat just as the plane reached the runway. The engines roared louder. The cabin shook slightly. Mia held onto her armrest as the plane sped up, faster and faster. With a smooth lift, the plane rose into the bright blue sky. Passengers cheered quietly. It was not just because they were flying. It was because they all felt something special had happened before takeoff. Something rare and important. Once the seatbelt sign turned off, more passengers came by to show their support. An older woman with gray hair leaned over from the row behind. She spoke softly to Mia. "Sweetheart, you stay strong. You're beautiful. Don't ever let anyone make you feel less." Mia's heart swelled with happiness. "Thank you," she whispered. A young mother with a baby in her arms passed by too. She smiled warmly and said to Mr. Johnson, "I hope my little boy grows up to be as brave as your daughter." Mr. Johnson nodded humbly. "She's already a fighter." The baby gurgled happily, as if agreeing, and everyone around chuckled softly. Even some of the flight attendants stopped by. One brought Mia an extra packet of cookies. Another slipped her a small card that said, "You are stronger than you know." Mia read the card twice, then tucked it carefully into her backpack. She wanted to keep it forever. Meanwhile, the woman who had caused all the trouble sat frozen in her seat, pretending to sleep. But no one had forgotten what she did. Now, instead of being the center of attention, she was completely ignored. That was the best punishment. Her hate had no more audience. The captain made an announcement over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you again for your patience and understanding earlier. At Airline Name, we believe every passenger deserves respect, kindness, and safety. Let's continue to show that spirit throughout this flight." Another round of quiet clapping filled the plane. Mia clapped too, her face glowing with pride and happiness. Mr. Johnson leaned closer to her and said quietly, "You see, Mia, there are always a few people full of hate, but there are many, many more full of kindness." Mia nodded seriously. She believed him with all her heart. After a while, the flight attendants came around with drinks and snacks. Mia sipped on apple juice, feeling calm again. She watched the clouds float by outside her window. It was so peaceful up here, so different from the ugly moment they had just faced. She realized something important. Hate might make noise, but kindness made strength. Her father opened his laptop and began typing quietly. Mia leaned over to peek. He was writing an email to his office, reporting the woman's behavior officially. She smiled, knowing her dad wasn't just her hero. He was making sure the right actions were taken, not with anger, but with justice. Justice, Maya thought. That's what makes real heroes. The rest of the flight was quiet. People read their books, watched movies, and whispered kindly to each other. Some looked over at Mia and smiled again, small signs that she was not alone. By the time the captain announced that they would be landing soon, Mia felt stronger than she ever had before. She realized that sometimes it only takes one voice to stand up to hate. But when many voices join together for what's right, they can drown out hate completely. Mia promised herself that one day, if she ever saw someone being treated unfairly, she would stand up too, just like her dad did. Because courage was not about fighting. Courage was about standing tall, even when the world tried to push you down. And thanks to this flight, Mia now knew she had courage inside her forever. The airplane wheels touched the ground with a small bump. The engines roared loudly as the plane slowed down, rolling smoothly toward the gate. Mia sat up straight, feeling a mix of emotions. She was happy the flight was almost over, but she also felt a little nervous. She could still feel the heavy tension in the air. Even though the angry woman had stayed quiet the whole flight, Mia knew the trouble wasn't completely over. Mr. Johnson leaned toward Mia and whispered, "Stay close to me after we get off. Don't worry, I'm right here." Mia nodded. She trusted her dad completely. As the plane came to a full stop, the seatbelt sign turned off with a soft ding. Passengers stood up quickly, reaching for their bags. The normal sounds of travel returned. The clatter of overhead bins opening, soft talking, the rustle of jackets. But around Mia and her father, people were still careful. Many passengers gave them small smiles or kind nods as they waited to leave. The angry woman stayed seated, gripping her purse tightly. Her face was stiff, and she refused to look at anyone. Mia could tell she was scared now, not because someone had threatened her, but because she knew she had been wrong, and everyone had seen it. The doors opened, and people began to move down the aisle slowly. Mia and Mr. Johnson waited for the crowd to thin before stepping out. As they entered the jet bridge, the cool air hit Mia's face. It felt refreshing after the heavy tension on the plane. But just a few steps into the terminal, trouble started again. A voice shouted behind them, "There they are. That's them." Mia spun around in fear. The angry woman was rushing toward them, pushing her way through the passengers. Before Mia could react, 2 airport security officers stepped between them. They held up their hands to stop the woman. "Ma'am, calm down," one officer said firmly. "Please lower your voice." The woman pointed at Mr. Johnson and Mia, her face full of rage. "They threatened me. They made me feel unsafe." Passengers around them gasped. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others pulled out their phones to record what was happening. Mr. Johnson stayed calm, just like before. He showed his FBI badge again, holding it up clearly. "I am Special Agent Johnson," he said in a steady voice. "This woman caused a disturbance on the flight. Many witnesses can confirm this." One of the officers nodded seriously. "We already received reports from the flight crew," he said. "You, sir, and your daughter are free to go." He turned to the angry woman. "But you, ma'am, need to come with us." The woman's face twisted in shock. "You can't do this to me," she screamed. "I'm the victim here." The officer stayed calm. "Ma'am, please come peacefully. If you refuse, we will be forced to arrest you for causing a public disturbance." Mia clutched her father's hand tightly. She could feel the stares of people all around them. Some looked angry. Some looked disgusted. But all of them knew the truth. The woman had created this situation herself. Now she was facing the consequences. Finally, realizing she had no way out, the woman dropped her head and followed the officers quietly. Mr. Johnson watched silently as they led her away. Mia breathed out a deep sigh of relief. "It's over," she whispered. Her father smiled gently and said, "Almost. Let's go, sweetheart." They walked through the busy airport, passing by stores and restaurants, heading toward the baggage claim. Along the way, some passengers from the flight came up to them. "You handled that better than anyone I've ever seen," a woman said. "You're a great dad," another man told Mr. Johnson. "And you," an older lady said to Mia with a kind smile. "You're a brave young lady." Mia smiled brightly, feeling a happiness that warmed her whole chest. They reached the baggage area, picked up their suitcases, and walked toward the exit. Outside, the sunlight was bright and strong. The world looked fresh and clean, as if it too was proud of what had happened. Mr. Johnson called a taxi, and they climbed inside. As they drove away from the airport, Maya leaned her head on her father's shoulder. "I'm really glad you were with me," she said softly. Mr. Johnson kissed the top of her head and whispered, "I will always be with you, Mia. Always." Mia closed her eyes, feeling safe, loved, and strong. She knew now that no matter what ugly things they might face in the world, she and her father would face them together, with calmness, courage, and unbreakable strength. And no amount of hate could ever take that away. The taxi moved smoothly through the busy city streets. Mia sat close to her father, looking out of the window. Tall buildings, bright billboards, and rushing people passed by quickly, but Mia's mind was still back at the airport. She couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened. The ugly words, the fear she felt, her father's calm strength, and the way so many strangers had stood up for what was right. Maya looked up at Mr. Johnson. "Dad," she said softly, "why are some people so mean?" Mr. Johnson thought for a moment. Then he answered in his calm, deep voice. "Some people are scared, Mia," he said. "They fear what they don't understand. Instead of learning or showing kindness, they choose hate." Mia frowned. "But why hate me? I didn't do anything wrong." Her father smiled sadly. "You didn't," he said. "Sometimes hate has nothing to do with what you do. It's about what they feel inside themselves." Mia stayed quiet, thinking about his words. The taxi stopped at a red light. Outside the window, she saw a little boy and girl, one with light skin, one with dark skin, playing together, laughing without a care in the world. Mia smiled. "If kids can get along," she said, "why can't grown-ups?" Mr. Johnson chuckled softly. "Maybe because kids remember something important," he said. "That we're all just people. We all want to be happy. We all want to be loved." Mia nodded slowly. She understood. The taxi driver, an older man with kind eyes, glanced at them through the mirror. "I couldn't help overhearing," he said with a smile. "You're right, young lady. Kindness is simple. Adults make it complicated." Mia and her father laughed quietly. The taxi turned into a quieter street. Trees lined the sidewalks. Children rode bikes. Old couples walked hand in hand. It felt peaceful, so different from the noise and hate they had just faced. Mr. Johnson reached into his pocket and pulled out something. It was the small card Mia had been given by the flight attendant. "You are stronger than you know." He handed it back to her. "You should keep this," he said. "Not just today, but always. Whenever someone tries to make you feel small, remember the truth." Mia held the card tightly in her hand. It felt warm, as if it carried all the kindness from that flight. The taxi finally pulled up outside their house. Mia and her father got out, pulling their bags behind them. As they walked to the front door, Maya looked up at the bright blue sky. She realized something very important. The world wasn't perfect. There would always be people who tried to hurt others with their words or actions. But there would also always be people who stood up, people who protected, people who showed courage and kindness. And Mia decided she would be one of those people, no matter what. Inside the house, Mr. Johnson set down the bags and stretched. "Home, sweet home," he said with a smile. Mia giggled and ran to hug him. "Thanks for being my hero," she whispered. Mr. Johnson hugged her back tightly. "You're my hero too, Mia," he said. "You stayed strong when it mattered most." That night, Mia sat on her bed, thinking about everything. She wasn't scared anymore. She wasn't angry either. She felt strong, stronger than ever before. She placed the little card on her bedside table and whispered to herself, "I am stronger than I know." And she smiled, knowing she truly believed it. The next morning, the sun poured softly through Mia's bedroom window. Golden light touched her face and woke her gently from sleep. She opened her eyes slowly and stretched, feeling a peace she hadn't felt in a long time. For a moment, Mia just lay there, remembering everything that had happened the day before. The anger, the fear, the kindness, the courage, and finally, the lesson she had learned. Today felt different. Today felt like a new beginning. Mia got out of bed, grabbed the little card from her bedside table, "You are stronger than you know," and tucked it into her backpack. She had decided something important. She wasn't going to just keep that strength for herself. She was going to share it with others. Downstairs, Mr. Johnson was already at the kitchen table, drinking coffee and reading the newspaper. He looked up and smiled warmly. "Good morning, champ," he said. "Good morning, Dad," Maya said brightly. She grabbed a slice of toast and sat down beside him. For a moment, they ate in happy silence. Then Maya said, "Dad, do you think there are kids at my school who feel like I did yesterday? Scared, alone?" Mr. Johnson put down his cup and looked at her kindly. "I'm sure there are, Mia," he said. "There are always people who need someone to stand beside them." Mia nodded, feeling more sure than ever. "Then I'm going to be that someone," she said with determination. Mr. Johnson's eyes filled with pride. "That's my girl," he said softly. Later that morning, Mia walked into school with a new sense of purpose. The halls were busy, full of kids talking and laughing. But Maya looked at them differently now. She noticed a boy standing alone by his locker, looking nervous. She noticed a girl sitting by herself in the cafeteria, staring sadly at her tray. Without even thinking, Mia walked over to the boy. "Hi," she said with a big smile. "I'm Mia. Want to sit together at lunch today?" The boy looked surprised, then smiled back. "Sure," he said shyly. Maya felt a small, warm spark inside her chest. It was the spark of kindness, the kind her father had shown, the kind strangers on the plane had shown, the kind that could change the world. At lunch, Mia and her new friend sat together. Soon, other kids joined them too. By the end of the day, Mia wasn't just feeling strong. She was making others feel strong too. And she knew this was only the beginning. That night, Mia and her father sat outside under the stars. The sky stretched wide and endless above them, full of shining lights. Mia leaned against her father's arm and whispered, "I'm glad the bad thing happened." Mr. Johnson looked down at her, surprised. "Why?" he asked gently. "Because," Maya said with a small smile, "if it hadn't happened, I might have never learned how strong I really am. And I might not have known how important it is to help others be strong too." Mr. Johnson hugged her close. "You're right, Mia," he said. "Sometimes the hardest moments teach us the most important lessons." Mia looked up at the stars. She still had a long life ahead. There would still be hard days. There would still be people who tried to bring others down. But now, she knew something powerful. Kindness is stronger than hate. Courage is louder than fear. And even one small voice can make a big difference. Maya smiled as the cool night air brushed against her face. It wasn't just an ending. It was a new beginning, and she was ready for it. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. But the memory of that flight never left Mia's heart. It didn't stay as a sad memory. It stayed as a powerful one. A memory that kept teaching her new things, even as time moved forward. Every morning, before she left for school, Maya would look at the small card taped to her mirror. "You are stronger than you know." And every morning, those words gave her a little more courage. At school, Mia became someone everyone noticed, not because she was loud or popular or perfect, but because she was kind. She helped the new kids feel welcome. She stood up for classmates who were picked on. She smiled at people who looked lonely. And slowly, something amazing happened. Kindness started to spread. The kids Mia helped began helping others. One by one, small acts of courage and kindness lit up the school like little stars. Even the teachers noticed. One afternoon, Maya was called to the principal's office. At first, she was scared. Had she done something wrong? But when she walked inside, she found the principal smiling warmly. "Mia," the principal said, "we've seen how you treat others. You're a leader. You're showing everyone that strength doesn't come from being the loudest or the strongest. It comes from kindness, courage, and respect." Mia's eyes widened in surprise. She hadn't even realized people were watching. The principal handed her a certificate. It read, "Mia Johnson, a true leader with a strong heart." Mia held the certificate tightly in her hands. Her heart swelled with happiness, not because she had won something, but because she had changed something. That evening at home, she showed the certificate to her father. Mr. Johnson's eyes filled with proud tears. "I always knew you had a strong heart," he said, hugging her tightly. "And now the whole world is starting to see it too." Mia smiled and whispered, "Because you believed in me first, Dad." Mr. Johnson shook his head gently. "No," he said. "You always had that strength inside you, Mia. I just helped you see it." That night, Mia sat by her window, looking up at the stars again. They twinkled softly against the dark sky like tiny promises, and Mia made a silent promise back. No matter how big the world seemed, no matter how hard some days might be, she would never forget the strength she carried inside her. And she would use it, every single day, to make the world a little brighter. Because strength wasn't just about standing up once. It was about standing up again and again. It was about lifting others when they felt weak. It was about believing in kindness even when the world tried to hide it. And Mia knew now, truly knew, that kind of strength lasts forever.